My name is Cleveland Brown, and I am proud to be right back in my hometown with my new family.
Last one. Let's do this. Let's end this 2 months late. So, when this show was first announced, it was compared to the Cleveland Show a lot. This was before it even came out. People calling it the Mexican Cleveland Show, up and down all day long. And that wasn't entirely fair. For starters, the Casagrandes haven't even come back to the main show yet. And yes, I am pronouncing the name right this time. For second, Cleveland is a boring character, and Ronnie Ann is an unpleasant bully, and no, I will not bend on this. Needless to say that this show did not start out on my good graces from conception alone. Ronnie Ann started out in the Loud House as a bully that had the characters teach the good old message that if a character was an outright asshole, then that means they like you, which is a message that's not only wrong, but dangerous. And considering they doubled down on it, it left a sour taste in my mouth. Not as sour as the absolutely deranged action that Lori took in forcing Lincoln to date his bully, which ruined her character. Look, I don't like Ronnie Ann as a character. She's definitely mellowed out over time, but she's always been one of my least favorites, so I was never gonna be high on a spin-off starring her. Watching this show, if there's a spin-off that I want to compare this to, at least on conception, it isn't the Cleveland Show, but Cars 2. They basically picked the worst possible character for me to make a spin-off. I'd rather watch a show starring Flip. And let's just say when we eventually learned what the show was going to be about, it didn't help sway my worries much. The show is called the Casagrandes. In Spanish, Casa Grande means big house. This is a show about living in a house with a lot of family members. Does that seem familiar, at all? I mean, it's not like we have another show about living in a house with a lot of people. It's totally filling a niche that hasn't been filled. Oh, but this one takes place in the city. Look, when we're talking about a spin-off, one of the first questions that we have to ask and answer before we even do anything else is, does this show have a reason to exist? Without money being an answer. From a creative standpoint, I don't see it. I really don't see it. Is this show the worst thing I've ever seen? Absolutely not. In terms of its actual quality as a show, it's alright. It's kind of in the middle for me. I don't think that this one is going to be lasting very long as a show, which is a really sad way to end this marathon. I mean, I'd rather end this on a high or even a low, but no, we're talking about a show that's somewhere in the middle. And why is this show in the middle? Because the show makes the mistake that many other spin-offs do, and that's the characters that they chose to represent the franchise going forward. And no, I'm not just talking about Ronnie Ann. The Loud House got popular because each and every one of the characters had, if not an interesting personality, then at least an interesting gimmick. Despite all the girls having 4-letter names all starting with the letter L, if you watch the show for long enough, you can easily tell apart Lana from Lola, or Luann from Luna. The same can't really be said about the Casagrandes. I'm sorry, but the Casagrandes are not interesting. And to make matters worse, you don't even need to watch the Casagrandes to figure out whether or not you like the Casagrandes. In the later seasons of The Loud House, there were episodes where Lincoln would go to Great Lake City and meet Ronnie Ann's family. Honestly, I do think this is a good idea in principle. It allows the idea of the spin-off to be a bit more palatable if you introduce the concept within the show that it's made of. Imagine if, say, the spin-off of SpongeBob was going to be about Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, instead of some summer camp that we've never heard of. Obviously, people will complain about it, but I think it would be much easier to stomach, because the show has gone in depth with its ideas about this particular concept. The problem here is that the concept needs to be appealing, and the Casagrandes episodes of The Loud House ended up getting so boring that I started skipping them. Look, we've gone from one cartoon with a large family to another cartoon about a large family, with far less dynamic characters. The biggest change between the Casagrandes and the Loud House is the scenery. However, very rarely in the Loud House was the size of the city they lived in ever really brought up. In fact, we've seen office buildings and the like within the Loud House. The Loud House took place in suburbia, but big cities do have suburbs that aren't that far away. I could easily imagine Lincoln and his sisters getting to the city at any time that a writer had a reason to put them there, especially since 2 of the sisters could drive. Making matters worse, we weren't into the Casagrandes concept or the idea. By putting them into the main show, it could sour fans of the Loud House on the Loud House. And I think that's where the Cleveland Show comparisons come from. Riddle me this. What is the creative point of taking Ronnie Ann away from Royal Woods if she's a good character? In every well-designed show, every character is there for a reason. Some characters, even characters well-designed, just cannot stand on their own. I can't say that this show's the worst ever, but as for the actual show, I found myself getting very, very bored. The quality of the stories are just not as good as the Loud House. And the main problem might be that the creator of the Loud House isn't working on on this, for obvious and deserved reasons, but still. Remember, way back at the beginning, Ren and Stimpy suffered after John K. left, even though he left for good reason. So maybe we've gone full circle here. Alright, let's talk about Nick-O-Rama and Nickelodeon as a whole, shall we? Have I been negative at times? Absolutely. Maybe even at points undeservedly so. That might be because I decided to marathon everything all at once. I'm still trying to decide whether or not this was a good idea. Time will tell on that one. Look, if you liked any of the shows I've given a negative review, or all of them, or if you dislike the shows that I've given a positive review, that's fine. It's all opinions, and I can only give my own. A lot of my opinions do come from having a lot of knowledge about animation and cartoons. When you watch as many cartoons as I do, things like stories being cliched are going to become a bigger and bigger problem to you. I'm not saying that if you don't watch as much as I do, or whatever, that your opinions aren't as valid as mine. What I mean is that when you watch so much, certain things become more or less important to you, and you become more familiar with the beats that cartoons use again and again. Comparisons get easier and easier to make. I can only try to be fair, which is not something I could say for Nickelodeon as a network, unfortunately. Whether you like the whole lot of the cartoons or not, I do think that we do need to talk about Nickelodeon as a corporation, as a network. One of the constant running themes throughout the entire 28-year run of Nicktoons was either their incompetence or their cruelty. It's either one of them or both of them, but it can't be neither of them. Nickelodeon as a network has either been incompetent or cruel. It started with over-airing the Rugrats and driving one of their first 3 cartoons into the ground, and their attitude isn't changing 3 decades later. Even with shows I didn't like Welcome to the Wayne or Legend of Korra, how the network has chosen to do things over the years has just been atrocious. I'm not saying that Disney, or especially Cartoon Network, has been entirely innocent in these ventures either, but let's be honest and get down to the facts. Nickelodeon is the worst of the 3 of them. Of the 48 Nicktoons that I reviewed, more than them have been abused by the network than not, by a wide margin. I don't think I can count the shows that weren't abused on both of my hands. As a company, I'm not going to be respecting them until they get their shit together. Going through every single one of their cartoons, one thing that's been just continually heartbreaking is seeing cartoons, both good and bad, just shunted like they have been. I get it, it's all about the money. You know, the money that poisoned the Rugrats and the Sponge and the Fairly Odd Parents. What is the future hold for Nickelodeon? I honestly can't say. In 2018, the president of Nickelodeon, Saima Zargami, stepped down. She had been the president since 2005, which is a good focus point of where the network started stumbling. Not only did shows like SpongeBob start getting over-aired and started to sour, but a lot of mediocre shows not made to last long, like Barnyard and Attack of the Power of Juju, were brought on and cut before long. And it wouldn't be very long until the network devolved into pandering shows like Sanjay and Craig or Fanboy and Chum Chum. The network at the moment is not the worst that it's ever been. The major dark ages stopped sometime around 2012, but the recovery was only really noticed around 2015 or 2016, with shows like The Loud House and Harvey Beaks. I could even say shows like Welcome to the Wayne or Pig Goat Banana Cricket were signs of good things coming. While I didn't like them, they were far more unique than the typical things that Nickelodeon was known for. On top of that, mainstay crutches like Dan Schneider or Butch Hartman left the network for one reason or another, getting Nickelodeon to be forced to at least try something new. However, recovery is a slow and difficult process. If there's something to worry about Nickelodeon's future, it is their amount of spin-offs. Ignoring what I think about the Casagrandes, the fact that it came out less than a year after Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Adventures of Kid Danger, and a year before Camp Coral, it feels like a very worrying trend. But not all Nicktoons are going to be in this vein. One of the next upcoming Nicktoons is called It's Pony.
Pony on the 6th floor, pony in the bathroom, pony in the kitchen, pony on the school bus, pony, 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 pony.
It's got an interesting concept about a girl and her pony living in an apartment in the city. If there's anything to be said towards Nickelodeon, it's that they need to treat their creators better. 100%. I kinda honestly blame John K. for the entire company's corporate culture. If you remember way back when, John K. took forever to create episodes of Ren and Stimpy, and was often over time and under budget. I guess that a creator like that incentivized the network to hold a tighter leash on others. And the fact that Ren and Stimpy was still profitable after he left proved to Nickelodeon the creators were expendable. I can't prove it, but if I had to wage a guess, that would be it. It's been almost 30 years, and the names that have had their creations abused by this network grows more and more. C.H. Greenblatt, Rob Renzetti, John Vasquez, Steven Hillenburg, the Avatar creators. And yes, I do include what Nickelodeon did to shows like Rugrats, The Fairly Odd Parents, and SpongeBob, abuse of those properties, especially in the latter case. What am I saying? If you like any of these Nicktoons, any of them at all, I'd recommend following the creators and see what else they're up. Don't just follow the properties that you've come to love. Whether or not I think it's a good cartoon or a bad cartoon, that's completely irrelevant. If you like them, see what else the creators have done. Maybe follow them if they have an internet presence. So many creators are now on Twitter, or Facebook, or even YouTube. In a perfect world, a network should be more expendable to a creator than a creator is to a network. And we've got a long way to go to get to that perfect world.